particularly during the pandemic, there's been lots of underspends, there's been lots of people struggling to deliver the project that they had in mind. So it's making adaptations and being agile. So we've had to be flexible along with that. And that stayed, so that's a positive, definitely. Proportionate, so we would not expect the same amount of detail for a 50,000 application as we would for a 500,000 application, and we can work with you to sort of guide you of the information needed along the way. And it's conversational, so we want to know what you're doing, what's out there, what's important to you, and to be honest, that's one of the perks of my job, is to hear about the amazing sort of positive work that's happening within the county. If you do go on to have a grant with us, those conversations would continue, and we're really keen for you to share your learning with us and with other groups. So these are our 3 priorities, and this is what we will consider how well your project meets these priorities when we get a funding request in, and your project will need to meet at least one of these very well, quite strongly, to be successful. So bringing people together, and a lot of projects locally are doing this very well and demonstrating that they are bringing communities together. Places and spaces, so improving places and spaces. I think immediately capital grants spring to mind. We don't generally offer big capital grants anymore, but remember community-led and where it's coming from, and we can offer some capital funding. It could be capital, revenue, joint, or just one or the other. But yeah, that is part of what we do. And then the last one is early intervention, so tackling issues at the root to prevent problems further down the line. Again, a really important one, but you'd need to show that you meet at least one of those priorities. And again, it could all change in the next year or two when our strategy changes. So we're also responding to the pandemic, as again, we all are. We're sort of along the road into recovery. But we'll continue to look at projects which are responding directly to the pandemic, and those projects that are agile, as I mentioned before. There's a lot of really good use of blended digital and face-to-face support delivery within groups, and those that have proved to be more agile and flexible are the ones that are sort of have done really well throughout this really difficult time. So it's kind of, again, it's showing how you can do that. And sort of proving how you have done that. And so these are our funding offers. So we've got awards for all, which I'll pass over to Jo to talk about in a second. Reaching communities, which I'll talk a bit more about specifically after this. But I will just say all our applications ideally will come in through our website, unless there's a specific reason why it can't be, in which case please do get in touch. But yeah, you can add additional information, so you get a 500 word count, but you can put, if you can't get your information in there, or you want to highlight some information with a video, put it on the application form and then get in touch with us, and we can sort of add anything else that highlights it, anything that's relevant, really. Okay, so I'm going to pass over to Jo. I shall stop sharing, and Jo will tell you a bit about Awards for All.
Thank you, Sarah. So I shall just share my screen. Might just take a minute to come through. Can you see that, guys?
Yes.
So, yeah, you can. Okay, brilliant. Thank you. Okay, so thanks for the invite. It's really good to be here today. So as Sarah said, I will be taking you through some of the Awards for All information. It is a bit of a whistle stop, and I think Sarah's touched on it, but we will have a chance to do some Q&As at the end. Okay, so the Awards for All programme is for grants of £300 up to 10,000, and it is the most popular funding stream at the National Lottery Community Fund, because it's a simple way to get small lottery grants. They're often good for pilot projects. We get a lot of projects, applications come through to pilot projects that then maybe could go on to standard, as an example. but you can find a list of all of our open programs on the website. We work slightly differently. It's probably worth mentioning actually in terms of Awards for All and reaching communities, because Sarah's very much out in the community. We are much more office based, and that's due to the high volume and the turnover, and they are much smaller kind of snappy grants. So we don't have the same relationship, unfortunately, with communities that, say, the standard Reaching Communities offer has, because they are working locally and remotely. So we rely a lot on the advice team to field a lot of our queries. So it is just worth mentioning that to you guys. Okay. So we fund all kinds of activities. We're open to, as Sarah said, again, we are open to everybody. I've done a bit of three little summaries really, just to give you a mix of what we funded recently. So one, quite timely, this is a mix of registered and unregistered groups, one being, as I say, a bit timely because of the Platinum Jubilee. That was hosting a street party, but it still had to meet an aim, and it was still bringing, it was a new community, so it was bringing that community together and building networks and trying to address antisocial behaviour. That was an unregistered group. The other two are both registered, one being an organisation operating a weekly community larder. But from that, there was also onward signposting, so much more of a holistic approach rather than just giving the food out. And the third one we funded recently, registered charity, and the project was aimed at supporting neurodiverse individuals with conditions, living with conditions including autism, ADHD, etc. And that was about building positive activities and having a positive impact on overall well-being. So recently we have funded over 1.3 million of Awards for All in the East and West Midlands area alone in the last 4 weeks. And that's actually last week's data, so it will be slightly higher than that now. So there is, and you know, considering not all of our grants are £10,000, that's a lot of grants that we do give out. So it's important to note that I'm specifically covering the Awards for All England, the eligibility and the application process. You can apply for Awards for All across the country, so England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, but there are slightly different rules and eligibility and criteria for each country. So I would point you in the direction of the website to check those if that is something that your work involves. So the Awards for All, sorry, I've skipped a slide there. So we're funding smaller grassroots organisations to do great things. And the application form has been set up so that it should be really simple to apply. So it's from £300 up to a maximum of £10,000 in 1 year. And they must involve your community. And I can't stress that enough, really. So we're currently continuing to support, as Sarah said, those that have been most adversely affected by COVID-19. So whether that's to continue to deliver business as usual, whether that's crisis response, recovery, or it's helping you to adapt to becoming more resilient and looking at what may be coming up in the future and how you might need to respond to that. We can only fund organisations for a maximum of 1 Awards for All grant within a 12-month period. And again, this is something I really want to stress, because we do get lots of groups coming to us again in that 12-month period. And it's a definite no. It's 1 Awards for All grant can be held in any of the 4 countries at any one time. And that date is taken from the date of your award. Again, all of these details are on the website, but there is just some of the information that needs reiterating, just because of the amount that we do reject when it's that kind of scenario. So one of the most important things, again, as Sarah has touched on with the standard, is to show meaningful involvement of people in the planning and delivery of your work. that's a really big factor in how we decide whether or not we are going to fund projects. Ideally, it's a 12-week term. You should be applying really 12 weeks before you need the money. We do state on the website that it is a 12-week turnaround for a decision. We may contact you in that time for additional information once the application has been received. But we do try to keep, so we are supposed to be a simple process. We do try to keep it as simple as possible. But that often there'll be information that we might need to help us to assess an application. So we may contact you. So we fund most types of not-for-profit organisations, unregistered community organisations, and potentially could fund public bodies such as schools. A full list of that again can be found on the website. So who can apply? So as it says on the slide, smaller grassroots community organisations, and we do prioritise on awards for all those organisations with smaller incomes. That's not to say we wouldn't fund organisations with higher incomes. They're just not a priority for our funding. And as you can imagine, the funding is limited. You know, we get a lot of applications on awards for all. So organisations must have at least 2 people on their board or committee who are not connected, and you must have a bank account in the legal name of your organisation. Again, all of this information can be found on the website. In terms of uniformed groups, yes, they're eligible, but due to the structure and the nature of the activities, it's rare that actually uniform groups would meet our aims and people in the lead. What we would be looking for with those groups is it to benefit more than just the uniform groups? And this is the same for schools, actually. So where has the idea started from? So if it's a uniform group, we'd be looking for, does it support the wider community? Is it addressing challenges in that community, and have the wider community, not just the uniform group, been involved, for instance? And in terms of schools, we would want, so we will fund schools. Again, they're not a priority for our funding, but it has to be something that isn't covered by the Education Authority anyway. But again, it's the same principle. It would have to involve the wider community and not just benefit school pupils, parents and teachers. Okay, we'll move on to the next one. So what can we fund? So we are a flexible programme and can fund a variety of costs. You can see a list on the slides there. Again, there will be a full list on the website. So they can be direct costs relating to the delivering of activities, or core costs to help with the day-to-day running of the organisation. They all need to be proportionate, obviously. In terms of arts, heritage, sports projects, we'll only pay for those kinds of projects where the activities that contribute, but it would still have to meet one of our funding priorities. So for example, if a project is using art, sport or heritage as a tool to engage, then we would look at potentially funding those, as opposed to a sports project, for instance, being sport for sport's sake or sporting excellence. Again, any of the points that I go over today, I can take some Q&As at the end, obviously, but we do rely a lot on the advice team, so they will be able to help you with some of those queries when you're trying to decide whether or not your project is best fit for awards for all. We don't fund educational attainment, so any school-based activity, so whether that be schools or providers looking to work in schools. So if we do fund, it has to be extra, outside of the curriculum, basically. Can't be in school time, and we wouldn't cover the main subjects, maths, English, PSE, etc. We won't fund bid writers. I know this is different across some programmes, but on Awards for All, the application is a simple process. The advice team are there to support and are really good with that support. So it is, if we know that it's been written by a bid writer, unfortunately your application will be rejected. So we do look at the organisation delivering the project to be writing that application form. when you complete your application form, it's almost a one-stage process. So we ask you to submit your application form and your bank statement at the same time. And at the point of application, you're also signing up to the terms and conditions. There'll be a checkbox on the application form. So it should be that in an ideal world, we'd get your application form, your bank statement, you would have agreed to terms and conditions. We should have all of the information we need to assess that application. Obviously, things come in and they're incomplete, or the incorrect information comes into us. Some things we may be able to go back to applicants about. Other things, they are just, because of the volume that we get, we do have to reject and ask you to reapply. Again, on the website, and this is one of the biggest reject reasons to do with bank statements on awards for all, so it's definitely worth looking on the website to see what the bank statement requirements are. So if you're not a new organisation, then we need a bank statement dated in the last 3 months. I won't go through all of the points because I'm sure we can share the slides afterwards. And also, if you're a new organisation and don't have a bank statement, we will accept a welcome letter. But again, there are restrictions on that, in that it has to be in the last 3 months, has to be in the legal name of the organisation, etc. So you would upload your bank statement to accompany your application form and sign up to the terms and conditions at the point of application. So in terms of aims, we have 3 main aims and funding priorities on England Awards for All, which came from discussions with grant holders, stakeholders and organisations, and Sarah has touched on some of these, but it's building stronger relationships, places and spaces, and helping people to reach their potential at the earliest possible stage. So we will be looking at applications and how strongly they must meet one of those, and how strongly they do meet those aims. And again, we'll continue to support people and communities that have been most adversely affected by the pandemic. Okay, I think that, right, yeah, okay. And again, Sarah has covered this one off, but our vision, community involvement, it's the same across the organisation really on most of the programmes, in terms of there must be community involvement, strengths-based and connected. So there's 3 things to think about really, I guess, in essence, on Awards for All. Is your project needed? What challenges is it addressing? Does the community need and want this? Because what we're looking for is very much community involvement, rather than organisations parachuting in, for want of a better expression, and delivering top down. Again, we are not looking to fund those kinds of projects. So looking at the assets in the community, volunteers, what's already there, how well do you fit in with existing work in your area? Again, all of this is on the website. So in order to apply, you would apply online. If you do have any access requirements, then you can contact, again, it's the advice team, and they can provide alternative materials. When you apply, you'll receive an if you're applying online, you'll receive an automated email confirming we've received your application form. So you know that it's been received, and a copy would be sent back to you. As I say, if you can't apply online due to accessibility, then the advice team are on hand to help. Their number will come up on the screen shortly. So I guess the biggest thing to take away is, if you're unsure about the types of projects we fund, contact the advice team. If you're unsure about what you need in terms of your bank statement, contact the advice team. And it's making sure that you're applying in your legal name, whether registered or unregistered. We don't ask for your constitution necessarily, unless we feel that we might need to see that as part of the assessment process, but you don't need to send anything in other than application, bank statement, and agree to the terms and conditions. So you are providing everything up front. There's only 3 questions on the application form. What would you like to do? How does your project meet our funding priorities? And how does your project involve your community? and that there are word restrictions on all of those. So there should be enough for you to get the detail of your project in. And I guess as well, it's worth probably saying here that we do see a lot of applications that come in with anecdotal evidence rather than evidence from your specific area or community, or that has come from the beneficiaries that you're trying to support. So we want it very much to be about the community rather than stats and data that that sometimes can be taken just from the internet. So we look at who can apply in terms of, you have to have two people, two different contacts. One would be the legally responsible contact and somebody that's legally responsible for the grant. The main contact would be the person that we can speak to if we need to about the day-to-day running of the project. Contacts can't be related to each other. So that's, again, this is all on the website, what marriage, living together, etc. We do ask for you to quote your income on the application form, but we don't ask you to submit accounts, which I think is different to some of the bigger programs, but we don't ask to see those. And I think, guys, that's probably it for me. But I've kind of jumped ahead on the screen there, but it's looking at, are we right for you? And if you think that that there's any doubt there, as I say, do contact the advice team. The last thing is just to say we do a monthly newsletter. Again, this is on the website. It has hints and tips, info on things that we funded and other stories. So please do take a look at that should you wish to. And I think it's back to you now, Sarah. So I will stop sharing my screen.
Brilliant, right. Excuse me. Let's see if I ended up in the right place. Yeah, there's quite a lot of overlaps in what we look for as a fund overall, so quite useful to hear that as well. But yeah, can everyone see my screen now?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Right, let me get to the right point. So I'll just do a brief run through on reaching communities specifically, but yeah, a lot of what Jo said is relevant as well. Obviously, it's a longer process. There's a bit more to it, and we do take more information. So we do look at your accounts if you make it through the first stage. But where are we? So we can cover single organisations, or we can fund organisations coming together as a partnership. That'd be two or more. Working together. You apply in the same way online. It's just our process sort of scenes is slightly different, but you apply in exactly the same way. And we really encourage partnerships to apply. There's a lot of really good partnerships happening in Northamptonshire, and they're kind of building on that collaborative work, so really positive. So we can fund short term, sort of 6 months really, all the way up to 5 years, and anything above 10,000, generally up to 500,000. There is a programme that goes above that. I won't go into that too much today. It's for sort of a lot bigger organisations, a lot bigger projects, obviously, and it goes to another stage of panel decision making as well. So we can fund expansion of existing projects and the development of new ways of working. We can cover costs for sharing, learning and showing impact, and we can support organisations to adjust to the new normal and focus on financial, strategic or operational planning, so kind of helping with the management strategic sort of moving forward of the organisation, which a lot of organisations are having to do at the moment. We also cover capital, as I mentioned, not necessarily large capital projects, and remember that they do need to be community led and community involvement. And as Jo said, meaningful community involvement. Again, I won't go through this. This is all on the website. We do, this is who can apply. We can't accept applications from this bottom section here. We do stress that we're looking for inviting applications from smaller grassroots organisations that perhaps wouldn't have applied before, just to kind of make it more accessible to all, really. And so what will we ask you? So the application form is a lot easier than it was, I believe. And there's only about 5 questions on there now. There's lots of sort of tick box questions and things that we do need to know data wise, that, you know, is really important. But the main crux of it is about 5 questions, and each one you can, I think you get about 500 word count for, and it's saying how you're going to involve your community and what your project idea is and what difference it's going to make to your community. So that's what we really want to know about, and what you're going to spend the money on. So yeah, just work your way through the questions. And again, you can give us a shout if you need any support with that. And you can, as the application goes along, you can pad out that information. So we'll have a conversation with you and gather more information along the way. So for some people, 500 words is more than enough, and for others, they just can't get everything in there that they want to. So having that additional conversation is really helpful. And oh, I should have mentioned, I'm sorry. So at this stage, going back a slide, at this stage, it's a 12-week turnaround, maximum 12-week turnaround, and that's to the first decision panel. So at that decision panel, they will decide whether they want to invite you to make a full funding proposal. And if you do, then you'll work with your funding officer for any additional information needed. So that's sort of round 2. We only invite people through to round 2 that we think have got a good chance of being successful. There's a higher success rate at that stage. Obviously not everyone gets funded, but there is a higher success rate. So it is more work to do. And for some organisations, it's more than others. If you're quite a small organisation and you're new to this, then we'll work with you a lot more throughout this process. But we will need to, at this stage, get a finalised budget from you, including any quotes and things like that. And we'll also need to look at your accounts. And as Awards for All, we'll need a bank statement. And that at that stage, so once we've got everything in, it's another 12 weeks from then. So a bit of a longer process, but not as long as it used to be, so I'm told. So safeguarding and policies and procedures, really important, because a lot of the projects, a lot of the organisations are working with vulnerable people. So we take safeguarding really seriously. And if you can get some help and advice on this, if you haven't got policies and procedures in place, then it wouldn't get through. So you'd need to work on this as part of the application. It's obviously important if you're working with vulnerable people anyway. So that's something that we would check and support with. And then, so if you are successful, it's once you've got an outcome from that final decision meeting, it all moves pretty quickly after that, really, as quickly as you want. So you need to start the project within 6 months of hearing that you've been awarded. Once you've returned your offer letter back, we'll work with you and can sort of set it up as and when, and we'll arrange an induction meeting so we can work out when payments are made and things like that. And at that time as well, so we'll let you know what monitoring we need. So it's really important that you share your project successes with us and what impact it's had, what difference it's made on your communities. So we really want to hear about that sort of throughout the project, and there's lots of guidance on that as well. You won't sort of be just left to it. And I think that is us. So there's, as I say, don't bombard Joe with emails, but contact the advice line for Awards for All, contact myself or Matt Cox if you're looking to apply for Reaching Communities and you're based in Northamptonshire. And we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you very much, Sarah and Joe. So are you able to take some questions?
Yeah, definitely. I don't think we've got long, but we can, yeah.
Yeah, fine.
Okay, does anybody have a question?
Yes, I have a question.
Okay, sorry, I can't see you. Sarah.
Oh, sorry. Let me turn my camera on. Apologies. Yeah, I've got a question, Charlie from Shire Sounds Radio.
Thank you.
We applied for the Awards for All just before Christmas of 2021, and we were rejected based on the fact that that you didn't feel we involved the community. Is there anything you'd advise that we should do that could involve the community from a point of proving that to yourself, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to say without seeing the actual application, but often, so you may, a lot of applications we get may detail some involvement from the community, but because of the volume of applications that we get, we have to, there has to be a lot of community involvement. So has the idea come from the community? You know, are there challenges within the community that project is going to address, rather than, say, for instance, and I'm not saying, Charlie, that it was the case with yours, is it more than just for the benefit of the radio station? You know, what kind of support is there?
Okay.
And
so
how it impacts on the community? Yeah.
Not necessarily about the fact that showing that we've got volunteers from the community, but more about showing how it benefits the external community.
Absolutely. So it's great that you've got community volunteers. So I wouldn't take that out of an application that you're submitting, but it is very much about. So how would your radio station, community radio station, how would that have a positive impact on the community? So I suppose the best way of looking at it is, how would that benefit them? How would it make their lives better?
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
That makes sense, yeah.
Perfect.
Okay, brilliant.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you very much. Donna, you've got your hand up, and then Rachel's got a question in the chat. So Donna first.
Hi, hello. So we recently applied for an all fund, and I just wondered, when you fill out the form, it has a drop down box of what county you're supporting. Now we work UK wide, and even though I could select Northamptonshire, what is the rules around if we was to nip over a little bit into a surrounding county and support them with the funding, or is that not allowed?
Is that for Awards for All? Was that a Reaching Communities Awards for All? Sorry, Joe,
Yeah, so we'll look at where the main beneficiaries are for that project. So sometimes it might depend, it depends on the project, to be perfectly honest. Some you just wouldn't expect that crossover there, but it depends on the context of the project and the support that's been provided. So it wouldn't be that we wouldn't fund those projects, but it would very much depend on the context. So it's hard to say without generalizing, to be honest with you, but it wouldn't be something that we would reject straight off, no. And we do see them where they do crossover patches, for want of a better word.
Even though I've selected one specific county, because it doesn't give you a choice to put others.
No, you're limited, aren't you? Yeah. But you could put that into your application form. So select the main beneficiary area, but you could put a line into your application form that says that you've selected, you know, XYZ. However, there is some crossover into, and that would be taken into consideration, because I get your point. You are limited when you're putting in your location.
Yeah,
but
brilliant.
you select the location for the main beneficiaries.
Yeah. Perfect, that's great, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Donna. Oliver, you've got a question.
Hello. It's the same question I keep asking. From the Reaching Communities Fund, would an application for a vehicle transport to be able to transport people around that community be a valid application? That's the main thing that we're looking for. And then, because obviously the Reaching Communities grant can maybe deliver more, would we be able to then tack on the price of what it costs us for a driver for that vehicle? I mean, predominantly we're looking for a vehicle, so that's the main thing. But if we could get the extra cost for that, would that be also an application we could put together, or does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we do fund vehicle costs, and that would be a capital, depending on what vehicle and what you had in mind. We have recently funded a couple of vehicles within Northamptonshire, and normally with something else, so as part of a wider project, So not just the here's your vehicle, do what you want with it. Like it'd be really interested to hear what you've got in mind and what sort of the wider project.
Oh, so we run outreach projects for people with disabilities to do outdoor activities and to take part in environmental projects. So we pick up people from home and then we take them to, say, the River Rise, and we get involved with the River Clean. What we found is in the outlying villages that some of the bus services have gone, so transport is part of our offer. We're currently using a people carrier that broke down last week. So, but we do have access to sort of a school minibus one morning a week, but that doesn't serve us for the whole week. So yeah, we work with different communities across sort of Northamptonshire, and for us, the transport is the key bit to make sure people attend.
Yeah, it's just kind of putting that forward in an application, really, and like who your main beneficiaries are, why they need and want that, and have they, you know, how have they indicated that's what they need and want. So it's kind of working with those to perhaps do a bit of consultation, work with those, and put forward why you actually need,
well.
There's no reason why you couldn't get the staff member funded as well to drive the vehicle. That's, you know, that is part of what we do. But yeah, have a think about it, and if you want to drop me an email, we can arrange a talk through.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Brilliant.
It's just worth, sorry, just jumping in there, it's just worth as well mentioning that I mean, it depends how much you're talking about, because obviously Awards for All is only, I'm really sorry, next door having work done, if you can hear that noise, on Awards for All, then we also fund vehicles and staff costs, but it's the context of the project, and as Sarah said, it's putting that across, getting that across in your proposal. But I'm not sure whether the limit of 10,000 would make Awards for All right for you, but it's just worth saying we do and could fund things like that.
It really depends what else is out there. So in some situations we've had to say no to vehicles because there are other options. So it's really kind of checking out what other options there are first, and then we take into account things like environmental issues. So we, you know, perhaps looking at.
Well, ideally, we have been looking at electric vehicles, but the costs of those are massive. But yeah,
good to consider. Definitely, it's not a no. So.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Oliver. Rachel Wheeler had a question which Joe has answered, but she's also asking you, Sarah, do you fund existing projects, or does the project need to be something new?
Not at all, not at all. No, it doesn't need to be something new, especially with reaching communities. It's good if there's learning along the way, and the project has developed along the way, and you've kind of learned from what you've done so far. But brand new projects, you know, we do fund, but quite often they're a little bit more established, and you've had grant management previously, so we can sort of see the evidence of that as you go along. So some people, for example, I think as Joe mentioned, will apply for Awards for All and manage a project through that first, and then come to reaching communities and sort of then show what they've done, and show that collaboration and show that sort of involvement with the community.
Thank you very much. Okay, any more questions? No? All done? Well, thank you very much indeed to everybody coming to the session, and thank you to Joe and to Sarah for your presentations. That's been really helpful. Can I just remind everybody that this will be uploaded to the Northants Council website for you to listen to again. Could you please remember to complete the questionnaire when you're there, and include your email address if you'd like to be included in the prize draw. So thank you very much to everybody, and see you at another session soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.